welcome to another episode of Lie, Cheat, and Steal, the podcast about liars, frauds, thieves, and bullshitters. I'm your host, Pat Soroyce. Just to let you know, we do 2 episodes every month here on our free feed, and if you like what you see, you can also get 2 more episodes every month on our Patreon. That's at patreon.com/lie, cheat, and steal. We're on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube at Lie, Cheat, Steal Podcast. And also, wherever you're listening to us, go and make sure you give us a rating and a 5-star review. That really helps get the word out. All that out the way, I'm here with my co-host, Kath Barbadoro. How you doing?
Hi, Pat. I'm okay. It's raining really hard in New York, and it's really miserable out. And I'm a very brave hero. I walked through the rain to go not vote for Joe Biden, so that was very exciting today.
Selfless.
It's funny because, like, in New York, there's no the only way to do like a dissenting vote and not vote for another candidate is they don't do write-ins or anything. You just have to submit a blank ballot. So I walked all the way there, took the ballot, and then just immediately put it in the machine and then came home. So it's like
democracy
very,
in action,
silly.
baby.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah,
How are you?
I'm good. It is the Texas summer is showing its face. It's getting here. It was hot as hell today. I was at work. We were outside. It was cool though. I'm at the new gig, the new site, I should say, and was just digging a bunch of holes today, looking for pipes. It was cool though. And then afterwards,
nice. Under Stanley Yelnats shit.
Yeah. After work, I had to drive from up north to my house, down south, then back up here with a stop central along the way. And I just saw all of Austin at a beautiful crawl in traffic for 2 hours outside of work. It was tight. But yeah, just in here with some non-alcoholic Heinekens. Doing the
delicious.
Damn thing, yeah. Just so good.
They have those a lot. There's an open mic I go to that friend of the show Michael Good runs. Hey. It's one of the ones where you have to buy a drink, and so you get the ticket from the bartender, to sign up for the open mic.
Yeah. And
I always get an NA Heineken there. That's always my Michael Good's open mic drink.
Yeah.
Which he told. Okay, so his open mic, it's a bucket mic, which I feel like Austin doesn't really do, but it's like
they do a couple.
You put your name in, and then they quote unquote drop from a hat. But the bit is that it's always rigged. They always stack it. I don't know why they can't just do what we used to do, where everyone signs up and then the host makes the order and just owns the fact that it's, they pick their friends and make them go first.
Yeah.
But Michael Good's bucket mic is called Tammany Hall. The joke is because it's rigged. And I asked him, I was like, Michael, is it called this because it's rigged? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, do you think people get that? And he was like, you're the first person who's brought it up. So I was very excited to maybe be the first person who got the bit. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, that's how I know about Tammany Hall, you know?
That's fantastic. I always have a good time when I go to New York. I see Michael. I've been on a show. I was supposed to be on it twice, but the tour got diverted. But yeah, Michael Good. The dude rules. Check him out. He has Steve Martin Presents. And also now, Tammany Hall open mic. So if you're into some New York jokes.
He does Steve Martin Presents with our friend Andrew Dismukes, who's a long time at this point SNL cast member. Yeah. And every time I've done that show, Dismukes has not been able to be there because he's busy being on SNL.
Yeah, right.
So.
Man, I find it so hard. Everybody's talking about SNL to be like, I know 2 cast members. I don't know.
Right. My friend's on it. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. My friend's Devin. My friend Andrew.
Well, I have a very New York-centric story for us today.
Hey, bada bing, bada boom. That's what I always say.
Yeah. So this isn't coming out for almost 3 weeks, but it was Easter Sunday this past weekend.
It was.
And I was texting you. I went to the Met, and I did some drugs, and I went to look at some art, and it was a real journey. The Met is cool. I really like the Met. It's the nice thing about the Metropolitan Museum of Art is that if you are a New York City resident, it is pay what you want. You have to pay something, but you can pay a penny if you want, which I think is very cool because we pay a lot in taxes. So it's nice to have something to show for it. So
I would go every day. I'm getting every fucking last red cent out of this place.
It does feel like that when you go. It is. I feel totally. I think I paid $3 this time, which is. If you don't live in New York, I think it's $30. So I was like, okay, I'll give you 1%
I
of
bet New York
this.
would be expensive for me on the day to day because I'm too fat to jump a turnstile. I would like try to jump a turnstile and just tumble forward and just get beaten to death by the NYPD.
I've done it a few times. Not it's not as hard as you'd think, but it is just because of the pressure of it. It's
Yeah.
like feels stressful because like if you fuck it up and get stuck, it's
Yeah.
like kind of a crucial moment.
A lot of exposure.
Yeah, exactly. And now I barely ever do it now, and I should do it more because like I have like a transportation like account, like money from my paycheck just goes right into this credit card that I use for my Metro cards.
Yeah.
So it's like pre-tax or whatever. But sometimes I forget my Metro card or something, and then I'm just like, fuck it, I'm gonna jump the turnstile or whatever.
Yeah.
But now you can use your phone. So
Oh,
I
that's
just am
tight.
like, fuck it, I'll just like Apple Pay or whatever. But then it's like, I already paid for the Metro card, now I have to pay extra. This fucking sucks.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. I
really
mean,
makes me mad.
there's like just a special frustration when you like you've paid for something and you're out in the world and you don't have that thing with you and you got to buy it again.
Yep.
Oh, I get so pissed off.
It happened to me today. I left my Metro card in the pocket of my pants that I wore to the Met, and I had to pay for the bus with my phone. I was really mad. But anyway, our story today is about the Met, full of scams and scandals. The Metropolitan Museum of Art.
I heard somebody there was on drugs the other day. That's what.
Believe it or not. Believe it or not. Yeah, no, I was. I had a great time. It was a good Easter Sunday. But it's a strange place. So I really like the old stuff. That's when I go to an art museum. I'm not that into the like Renaissance and stuff. I like contemporary art and I like really old stuff. That's what I like. So the Met has a ton of really old stuff. What we're going to talk about today is how they got it. Spoiler alert, not through above board means most of the time.
Oh man, no, that's I never would have imagined that they would have gotten it slightly underhandedly. That is sick. I like the old stuff too. Like when I like this is a weird thing, but I've found myself in some cemeteries lately because I've been going on walks and like especially when I was out in the road in the Dakotas and stuff, and I'm always like looking for that old grave. Like, where's it at? Where's that old crazy one where I'm like, holy shit, the guy was born in 1690 or whatever. Yeah,
totally. The older the better. That's growing up in New England. There are a lot of really old cemeteries, and they have the coolest art on them.
Yeah.
Like there are a couple one of them is called like the old stonecutter of Boston or whatever, and he did all of the graves in this like old historic cemetery, and they're so metal. They're like so it's like skulls and hourglasses and like grim reapers and shit. They're awesome.
Yeah,
I really want to get a tattoo of one. They're like so sick.
We walked through a Boston cemetery one time when I was there doing some shows, and it was sick as hell.
Yeah, it's pretty rad. But yeah, that's what I like too. I like the old stuff. The older the better. I was thinking about this because I went to see I was actually asking my mom about this because we did an episode about the Archaeological Museum in Mexico, which I really liked. And the Met doesn't have a whole lot of Mesoamerican stuff. It has some, but like compared to how much like Egypt stuff they have or ancient Greek stuff they have like very, very little. And I was asking my mom about it because I was like, I mean, probably part of it is racism or whatever, but like, it's just weird that they don't have all this stuff. And my mom is an art historian, and she said like, well, a lot of what museums have, it's based on what was popular to collect. And like Egypt, even though like, yes, Egypt is in Africa, it's not European, but it was really popular to collect. And like, especially when the Met was being founded, Egyptian stuff was really popular. So like, that's what got donated to the Met is like all this Egypt stuff. Mesoamerican stuff has not been historically popular for rich people to collect, so they don't have as much. And that just sort of got me started thinking about like all of the sort of ways that what you see in a museum is like very socially conditioned, and like it's not just a matter of like what's out there for them to get. It's a matter of like what has cachet, what their donors want, because this is all like funded through philanthropy and stuff. And
That's wild.
yeah.
That reflects itself in like ancient history and stuff. Like I'm a big ancient
Mm-hmm.
history buff, listen to a ton of podcasts, and so many of these like scholars are like, "Well, this is what we know because this is like we have funding to do these things," like
Yeah.
and we the things we know a lot about is because there's a lot of funding, and
Mm-hmm.
it can be dangerous because like after a while sometimes people will just skew and think, "Oh, that's what history is." There's nothing to be discovered
Right.
south of the Sahara, or there's nothing to be discovered in
Right.
South America, and it's like South America I think is showing it's like no, it's not true at all. And there's a current uptick in like African archaeology right now where they're just
Mm-hmm.
finding all sorts of cool shit because it was like, yeah, it was there. You just assumed it wouldn't be and didn't look.
Right. And people weren't interested in finding out about it,
Yeah,
like because it
exactly.
wasn't
Yeah.
considered valuable.
The tastes of the
But
rich drive too much, man.
I was thinking about this because there's I really like Cycladic art, which is this art. It's from about like 2500 BC on these Greek islands. There are these like white statues. They're all like figures of women. They're very stylized, and they became really popular in like the early 20th century because Picasso was really inspired by them. I'll send you a picture. You can use it for the video. So there's this huge new collection of Cycladic art at the Met, and one of the things that they had was actually it was exhibited, but in the notes for the piece, like the little thing that explains it, they said they think it might not be original. They think it might be counterfeit. And the reason that it was counterfeit was because these things were so popular. Like they were really, really in demand because they inspired Picasso and all these modernist artists. I just sent you a picture.
Yeah, I can see that. That's definitely looks like they got the Picasso nose going on, yeah.
Yep.
And those
totally.
also I've seen those before. Those look really cool. I could see how those got popular.
They're very
those are
chic.
Sick. Yeah. Yeah, that looks like I could see like a character in a movie who was like I don't know, like lived in New York or like whatever like
Right.
like 90s art where it's like, oh yes, this I can see that in the corner for sure.
Mm-hmm. And so the guy who collected all of these is this billionaire. He's the guy who they named the NYU Business School after. He's like one of these guys, and the reason he collected it is
NYU. That's crazy.
Yeah. Talk about some shit at the Met, some down and dirty, behind the scenes wheel and dealing at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. So
Jason Derulo falling down the stairs at the Met.
we're gonna cover it. It's in here.
Yeah.
No, it's not, but it should be. Yeah. So the Met, like part of the reason this happened, right? The Met was founded in 1880, which is way later than like the other museums that are sort of in its class.
Yeah.
So like the Met is like one of the most sort of important, it's I think the most visited museum in the US. The ones that are on par with it are the Louvre and the British Museum are usually like mentioned in the same breath. The British Museum and the Louvre are way older than the Met and had all of their country's like spoils of colonialism to fill their museum with, right? The US didn't have that. We were a colony in ourselves. Right. We didn't have any of that stuff. And so the Met was sort of like always kind of playing catch up with these other museums and like really wanted to be seen on par with them. So they got like really aggressive about getting stuff. Like they really wanted stuff for their collection, which led to them kind of looking the other way about how things ended up with them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like this, a lot of my research for this comes from the ICIJ, which is the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists. They wrote an article about this. So like the Met was still sort of podunk until like the 60s, like the 1960s. That's when it kind of became a world-class museum because they got really aggressive about getting these like major acquisitions and stuff. So the director at the time was this guy named Thomas Hoving, and he was sort of in charge of getting all this stuff from like Greece, Italy, Egypt, India, Cambodia, all over the place. At this time, East Asian stuff is really popular to collect. So they got a lot of that. Up until then, it was Egypt, like tons of Egypt stuff, especially like turn of the 20th century with King Tut's tomb and all that. Like that's kind of the basis of their like antiquities stuff. So the whole thing has this reputation of being like an amazing museum director because he got all this stuff. But then he writes this book and he's like, this memoir, and he's basically just like, yeah, you kind of had to be friends with art smugglers to get all this stuff. Like, he basically admits that like he approved particularly Indian and Cambodian stuff that he was pretty sure had been smuggled, but he wasn't going to ask any questions on it. So by the end of his tenure in this position, he claims that he tried to change the policies, but it doesn't seem like very much changed because in 2023, so about a year ago, early 2023, the ICIJ went through the museum's catalog and found at least 1,100 pieces that were previously owned by people who had been either indicted or convicted of antiquities crimes.
Oh, yeah. So, hey, why do you have all their stuff? Like, I don't know what happened.
They just gave it to us. Are we supposed to say no? You know?
Imagine some guy just like holding like a little Sphinx statue and he just like rubs it and puts it in his gums. He's like, yep, that's Egyptian.
That's pure. Yep. Well, yeah. So like they have like 1,100 things, which granted the Met has a lot of stuff, but like that's a good chunk. Apparently of this 1,100, over 300 of them are on display, and fewer than half of them have reliable records describing how they left the country they came from. So that's a problem. That's no good. A lot of these places too, like they have rules about what you're allowed to bring out, and a lot of these artifacts come from places that have had strict export laws for longer than the Met has had these things. So like it's shady. It's really shady.
Exactly. At that point, it's like how do you not return it, or how do you justify not returning it? You know, like it feels like you got to do some mental gymnastics to otherwise be like, no, it's mine. Like, you know, like we're keeping it. Like, and I know there's some people who don't have a problem with that. You know, like some people think that's where it belongs. Indiana Jones among them thinks it belongs in museums. But like, at the end of the day, I don't know. It's just kind of crazy because like unless you just want to openly be like, yeah, the fuck, we're stealing this stuff. If you find out it's stolen, you're not giving it back. That's that's on you.
Yeah, I mean, it's tricky because, like, I certainly like going to see this stuff at the Met, but also it is, like, literally taken from, like, I have a really good example here of the kind of stuff that happened. So the ICIJ article focuses a lot on Nepal because apparently there's been a lot of art looting there and it hasn't really gone investigated the way it has in, like, Italy. So the ICIJ article talks about this 1,000-year-old shrine to Vishnu in this village called Bugmati, Nepal. It's this like sandstone shrine. It's in this cave. It's like been in this town forever. Like it's a local. They take care of it. One of the villagers says, when women start their labor pain, our elders used to come put mustard oil on the statues so that the women giving birth would be safe and the childbirth would be easy. So, you know, it was like part of their religious practices in this town.
They just like come home one day and just like turn on the lights, throw down the keys, and just like look at the corner. It's like, shit, Vishnu's gone. It's like
that's pretty much what happened. That's basically it.
Damn.
Yeah, wow. I don't know if they were going in there because someone was giving birth or something. I hope not. I hope they didn't.
He's like, I'm coming with the mustard oil. What the fuck?
But yeah, apparently in the early 80s, all of a sudden it was gone. And they were like, what the hell? This fucking sucks.
Labor is painful. What the hell are you taking my Vishnu for?
So it went missing in the early 80s, and then about 10 years later, it gets donated to the Met by like a wealthy collector.
Yeah. So how'd you get it, dude? Yeah,
and like the Met takes it. I don't know what kind of I'm gonna send you a picture of the thing. It's cool, man. I get why someone would want it, but you know, you can't be taking things from villages when people need to make sure their childbirth goes all right.
It's I wonder, like, it is kind of crazy on art like that, like the time it spends in the collector's possession. Oh yeah, that's sick as hell. That would bring any room together. Well, you wonder like how long it spends in someone's possession. Like, you know, like before like it goes to the Met, and it's just I I don't know. That's just a wild thing. I've never had money to splurge on art. I mean, I've had money. I'm not huge on decoration. I like being in decorated places, but my apartments and rooms have a tendency to just go real bare bones. And like, I just,
Sure.
I'm always like, yeah, I'll get around to it.
R/male living space.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'm like, I'll put something up. But I really do appreciate places that are like that. But it is just kind of crazy to think that when you have that money to expend and you're just like, I'm going to get something legitimate and real and just sick as hell, but it's also from another place, and you have that. Do you think like they get rid of it because they're like the heat's closing in, or it's probably just a clout thing of being like, I donated this piece to the Met?
Yeah, I think it's also can be like a tax write-off if you've had it appraised and then you donate it. It's like a really common form of philanthropy where like people won't even use it as decoration; they'll just buy it to have it. They'll buy it with the express intent of giving it as like a gift.
Yeah. You just gotta like vet your like household staff, and you're like, and you were from where again? She's like, Nepal. And you're like, ooh, I can't have you in here. Like, yeah, we're gonna go with somebody else. We're gonna go in a different direction, man. I'm sorry.
Well, the thing that's like so crazy about this to me, so the Met gets it in the 90s, and it stays in their collection on display for 30 years before it gets identified. So this Facebook account called Lost Arts of Nepal identified it and posted a picture of it and said, this is from this village. It was taken in the 80s. So there was a lot of like political unrest in Nepal in the 80s, which is like a real theme that we're going to see is when there's like instability in a country, people will take the opportunity to loot it of its,
that's when the treasures get out of there. So I'm like, I mean, I guess you could see, like, I would be happier. It is kind of a thing. It's like, I would be happier art leaves a country where it's unsafe. It doesn't sound like the Vishnu statue was unsafe. It sounds like it was just not making some guy any money. And he was like, hey, I'd like to see maybe a little bit of money. But like, it is kind of a thing of like, if, an empire is about to fall or whatever, and there's riots in the streets, if somebody is pressing to get art and artifacts, things you can't replace, irreplaceable pieces of the culture, and get them out of there. I mean, I can see the value in that. But then what you
if the alternative is that they're going to be destroyed, at least they'll be safe somewhere else.
Yeah, at least they'll be out of there. But then you got to then the question is like, well, what is this person doing with them after? And then like that's that gets sticky.
Right. I mean, there's a great example of that at the Met, which is this building called the Temple of Dendur, which is basically it was reset up in the Met. It has this whole room dedicated to it where it's just like an enclosed space around this temple that was moved because Egypt was building a dam that was going to flood the area where it was. Oh. So they took it, and then it's controversial because it's like, well, they took it in Egypt, gave it to the US, but like, why couldn't it stay in a museum in Egypt? Like, why did they give it to the US? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
But it's the same. The rationale is the same.
It's
going to get destroyed, so we can move it.
Yeah, to paraphrase Debo from Friday, to paraphrase Red from Friday, but it'll be like our house at Dendo. We'll just keep it at my house. We'll just share it.
But yeah, so this Facebook page identifies this as a stolen relic, and the Met has since removed it from view, and it's not publicly listed anymore. But they, as far as I know from this article, it has not yet been returned. They like put up some pictures from 1969 of the shrine in this place, so they're like, "See, it was there." Like,
that looks a lot like my statue.
The Met has over 250 artifacts from Nepal. Only 3 of them have clear paperwork explaining how the stuff got out of Nepal. Rest of it, who knows?
That is not an even-handed distribution there. That is a lot of that shit is unaccounted for. That's wild.
It's just like unaccounted for is really the right way to say it. And this has been going on like even recently. So of the 1,000 pieces of art that the ICIJ found, more than 800 were once connected to this guy, Jonathan Rosen, who was charged in an Italian antiquities trafficking case in 1997. They got stuff from him before and after he was charged. So like they knew he was shady. You know?
Man,
go ahead.
If America is going to collapse, what art are we getting out of here? What are you taking?
That's a good question. Um, hmm. I'm trying to think of see, I like all the old stuff. I'm trying to think of American art that I like really like.
Yeah, I'm getting a Bucky statue.
Yeah, that's a good one. Get a Bucky statue out of here.
Yeah.
That's got to go. That's got to be protected,
the future needs to know about this,
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, there's like the equivalent of Bucky statues in the Met for sure.
Yeah. I wonder how much stuff and I'm sure it's a lot. Like this is not lost on historians. Like how much stuff that we revere is really nice art. Like what the meaning was to them. Maybe it was funny or it was a joke or especially like those Olmec heads. The features are different on every one of those Olmec heads, which leads archaeologists to believe that they're probably modeled after distinctive people, like individuals.
Yeah.
And then so it's just kind of like, I don't know, like with some guy just like, hey, we got your Olmec head. They whip the little drape off and he's just like, oh, that's me.
That's me, huh?
Yeah.
Interesting.
You took a lot of liberties with my nose. I see that. I see you're all over the place with that. Okay.
I think about that with the Greek stuff a lot because it's a lot of wine bottles and stuff. So it's I don't know. It's kind of funny to think about, them putting Carlo Rossi's in the Met.
I was just listening to a podcast on the way here about ancient Persia, and they had this correspondence from it's a rare correspondence from a female ruler, and she was real girl boss with it. She was just like, get these 1,000 liters of wine from my estate and such, and then she ended it with do it now. And then, but her seal was just her sitting there in a throne while some dude poured her wine. That was her seal.
Fuck yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That reminds me of, isn't one of the first examples we have of a full narrative piece of writing, somebody complaining about how a merchant stiffed them or something. It's like a bad Yelp review.
Yeah,
it's one of our first things that we have.
It's just like such and such gave me this many talons of steel and it was low grade or something. Yeah. It's we've always been us.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so this guy, Jonathan Rosen, he had this gallery in the 80s and 90s where he had a bunch of Asian and Mesopotamian and ancient Roman artifacts. And he turned out to just have gotten them under shady circumstances, working with these other guys who were convicted of trafficking. So he got pulled in because the Italian guys were investigating a big art trafficker in Italy, and this guy Rosen was sort of implicated in that.
When you steal a bunch of Roman art, it's mad titties. There's a lot of titties in a Roman art heist.
So a bunch of other museums have given stuff back because of this. So the Cleveland Museum gave back stuff that was connected to Rosen. In 2013, Cornell gave...
because they just know what it's like to be robbed.
Right.
Yeah. Cleveland knows what it's like to catch the short end of the stick. They're we're not going to perpetuate the cycle.
Right. They know what it's like to be downtrodden. Yeah. So they're we'll give it back. In 2013, Cornell returned 10,000 tablets to Iraq that had been donated by Rosen. Again, these were things that had been smuggled out of Iraq during the Gulf War in 1991. Yeah. That's when all this shit happens,
Yeah. Yeah, they got a lot of cool stuff over there. They've been in the game for a while out there.
Yeah, I mean that's a big thing that I feel like they've gotten it back now, but there are a lot of really archaeologically important sites that ISIS was in charge of for a while.
They did a number that was very disheartening. I mean, obviously ISIS did a lot of shit I wasn't on board with, but
sure.
That was the one where it was they were just they'd show up at a place and it'd be everything's idolatry. You know what I'm saying? So all this has to go. It's going to get broken in the streets. Bunch of jerks. Just,
thumbs down.
Yeah,
thumbs down on ISIS.
Yeah. I will leave a scathing Yelp review. 2 stars.
2 stars.
That's kind of high for ISIS.
So another thing the Met has, they have 85 pieces that were once owned by this guy, Subhash Kapoor, who the U.S. Department of Homeland Security considers him, quote, one of the most prolific commodity smugglers in the world. He was arrested in 2011 and convicted in India in 2013 of trafficking over $100 million in antiquities. So most of the stuff that the Met has from him is ancient Indian art, and they still have a lot of it. They after this article came out in March of 2023, the Met returned some of it, but only because Manhattan prosecutors had a warrant for it. So like a lot of times when the Met does give something back, it's because like the law is forcing them to.
Yeah.
Like they do not voluntarily repatriate this stuff very often.
Yeah. Man, but that's like an art bust like that just has to like because obviously it's like the police, they behave one way, so they're running in there, they're grabbing stuff, but just see like a house get kicked door and they're just like pulling statues out and shit. That's just a fun thing to think about. Also, if you're gonna traffic
I
something,
hope they're not doing it that way. I hope it's not just the regular ass NYPD going in there, putting down their fucking Candy Crush for 5 minutes and moving out all this art.
Man, I wonder if they just like how many statues have been shot by the NYPD because they're like,
oh my God.
in, I
stop resisting.
I saw a figure. Yeah, stop resisting. Put your arm behind your back, and that's why the Venus de Milo, no arms. It got caught up and it tried to resist arrest.
So yeah, I just sent you a picture of one of the things that got sent back, which is this statue called Celestial Dancer, which was like very notable in the Indian art collection.
Sick.
It's really cool.
That's gonna be at the lodge one of these days.
Huh?
Yeah, this is gonna be the lodge one of these days.
Right?
We need to get the homies at the lodge in touch with Mr. Kapoor.
Here's one that I think would look good at the lodge. This is my last example, and then I'm going to go into another story of some forgery. This is kind of a weird story because it involves Kim Kardashian, believe it or not. Okay. It's a very interesting twist to this. So
it just has like the statue has a donk. You're like, whoa! Also, that coffin is sick as hell. You called that.
It's dope. Yeah. It's apparently a high-ranking priest from I think like 50 BC or something like that. And this coffin was purchased from an art dealer in France for $4 million for the Met. And like 2 years after that, Kim Kardashian takes a picture of it, posing next to it. She's wearing a gold dress. So presumably she just takes a picture of it after the Met Gala because she matches it, Yeah. But someone who saw her picture was one of the original thieves of this coffin, who had been burned by his partners. So he was like, oh my God, those people that fucked me over, our thing went to the Met. Like he didn't know it was, he just knew he stole it. You know what I mean?
That's got to be a hell of an endeavor. That's a big gold coffin.
It's big. Yeah.
Yeah. He's got to put sunglasses on him, and he's like, hey, this is our buddy. We're like, I went to Egypt and all I got was this T-shirt. You just dress him up, and you got to buy an extra plane ticket, and you got to put him in the seat.
Yeah, I don't know the particulars of it, but I know it did take a team. So,
it takes a village.
Maybe it takes a village to steal a huge Egyptian sarcophagus. But yeah, so the guy like basically hit up the DA and was like, this is stolen. And it got taken, like again, with most stuff, this left Egypt in 2011 at the beginning of the Arab Spring. So instability, you know what I mean? Yeah. So they ended up charging the French art dealer. His name is Christophe Kunicki, and his husband were charged in fraud and money laundering. And in 2019,
equality.
So this was like a big part of this exhibit that was supposed to run through April 2019. But after this all came out, the DA's office contacted the Met and basically was like, we fucking got you. Yeah. Like, you got to give this back. Because that's the thing. So
how many times are they gonna is this like a villain in a like a Batman series where they just like come back every week like, oh, we got you again, the Met, like just does something happen to these guys?
Well, I just don't know what could happen because like they have all this shit and like basically it's one of those things where like if you can't prove where it came from, then you can't give it back.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And they
So
always have
like
plausible deniability about what they knew. Yeah.
exactly. So like that's the thing with this coffin, right? It had very crudely forged paperwork that allegedly came from this art dealer. I'm sure the Met, if they had cared about authenticating it, would have seen that it was forged. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? They
Yeah.
just like don't care because they want the stuff.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like that's kind of how it's been since its founding, is like there's a quote in here that says they want one of everything. Like that's just how they that's how
That's
they
like a
collect,
motto.
you
If you
know?
come to the Met, we have one of everything.
Yeah. So it is like this thing where they keep getting caught, they keep having to give things back. It happens like a couple times a year, it seems like. But unless you have like proof, like unless you have a guy going, yes, I stole this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like apparently he had like I think he like kept the mummy's finger bone or something, so he like could
Insurance.
prove it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, you know how like violent criminals will steal art to have a bargaining chip when they go to for trial? It's like art thieves
Right.
will actually have a piece of a human body. Like, hey, check it out, I got it right. Like this is, yeah. That is. I mean, that's part of his part because that there's they're like, man, that's a chicken bone. Shut up. There's a Popeyes cup in your car, bro. Come on, I know what you're doing.
But yeah, so like this is just this constant thing. And of course, like a really big part of this is there are a lot of newer laws about Native American stuff and like what you're supposed to do with Native American stuff if you have it as a museum. And the Met doesn't have a ton of Native stuff because, as I said, like that wasn't popular to collect. So like it's funny because like I was like, oh, I really wish there was more Mesoamerican stuff in this museum. And then I think about how all their shit was like stolen, and I'm like, maybe it's okay that there's not a lot of Mesoamerican stuff here. Like maybe that's fine.
Yeah, to find Mesoamerican stuff, you got to go to the Spanish museum. It's like they got a ton of it. Over
Right,
there.
exactly. You got to go to Spain. But yeah, so they have some native stuff, and the way that they get around repatriating it is that a lot of their collection is on, quote, permanent loan. So it's not owned by the museum.
Oh, yeah.
And if it's not owned by the museum, they don't need to repatriate it. Because like the laws are generally about like publicly funded stuff, which like the Met is publicly funded, but they don't own the artifacts.
Yeah.
The donor owns the artifacts and they're on loan from them. So it's like a way that they get around it.
Yeah. That's just the idea, like the thing that we discussed in the Patreon episode about DC Solar, just the idea of like these guys buying all these generators, but they don't even actually own them. The other guy's leasing them out in their name. It's like you can really, red ink yourself out of some problems, just like draw, create a corporate structure that there's a lot of buffer zones, not unlike the mafia.
Right. Well, it's like everybody here has a common interest, right? Like the art dealers want to sell the art. The Met wants to buy the art. Who is checking to see what the village in Nepal wants? Like the village in Nepal is not being represented in this transaction whatsoever,
Yeah, who's asking about the village in Nepal? Not many people outside of the village in Nepal are worried about what happens to them. That is unfortunate.
So I have one more story to tell about forgery at the Met, which is also a problem, although not quite as prevalent of one. So this story is about these Etruscan warrior figurines that were exhibited at the Met from 1930s to 1960s. They were up for 30 years. I'm going to send you a picture. They're pretty
Etruscan stuff.
Fucking... Etruscan stuff is dope. These are like really cool.
Yeah, just like the idea that like they were like they were right next to Rome at the same time, coming up together. Like not together. They were at odds, but it's just like Rome obviously overshadows them, and so I'm always very interested in like the little groups of people at the corners of these great empires, like Elamites, Nabateans, the Etruscans, like shit like that. That's where my interest lies.
Yeah, the Etruscans are really interesting because they like influenced Rome, but also were enemies of early Romans. And there's the Met has really cool Etruscan art. There's a really fucking awesome chariot that I saw that was like
Oh,
It's
that is
dope,
sick.
man.
I
Yeah.
don't know enough about Italian cuisine to differentiate, like to say like, oh, like this is a Tuscan dish or whatever. But I know that if you put the word Tuscany in your menu item, I will probably buy it. 'Cause
I
I'll be
will.
like,
I will eat it.
yeah, I'm like, I bet that's gonna taste good.
I'm sending you the chariot, not because it's relevant, just because it's cool.
Oh,
It's
that's
just
sick as
dope.
hell.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah,
I really, I'm a fan.
yeah,
But anyway, so presumably next to this chariot were these Etruscan warrior figurines, which are pretty big. I think they were like, yeah, like they stood 8 and 6 feet high. So there were a couple of them. These big terracotta Etruscan warriors. They unveiled them in 1933. And the curator who acquired them at the time, his name is John Marshall. He was like super stoked on them. They were apparently really interesting because they showed a lot of Greek influence, which was sort of unusual with Etruscan art. Like it was supposed to be sort of this like missing
yeah.
link.
There's tzatziki sauce all over everything. Like, what the fuck?
So they were allegedly from the 5th century BC, and yeah, they were like, wow, they're full of Greek flavors, lots of tzatziki sauce.
Full of Greek flavor. Man, it's happy. Another episode where we just start talking about food again.
Yeah. But yeah, so this guy, John Marshall, he was super into it. But there were people even from the beginning who were like, I don't know. I don't know if these are what they say they are. Critics said that they seemed like oddly proportioned. They weren't proportioned like other Etruscan artifacts of this time. You can see one of the pictures, the one on the left that I sent you. It has like one really long arm and one shorter arm. Like it's sort of stocky, and it has like short legs. Like
Dude,
they were just
yeah.
like it seems weird.
That dude looks like an arm wrestling champion.
Yeah.
He's got the one big one.
Oh man, have you seen Physical 100? This is a
I saw
total
season
offshoot.
1. I know season 2 just came out.
I just finished season 1, and I'm just like, I love the arm wrestler guy. There's like this big, he looks like a giant baby, and he just has huge arms, and he's a champion arm wrestler. I was a big fan of that guy.
I love how they it's all overdubbed, but it's 100 people. So like eventually you maybe get like 5 or 6 voice actors. They're gonna run out of voices, and by the last episode, it's just like, oh yeah, very good, you should go. And it's like, oh man, look at his physique. And it's not, and like it's just funny the voices they use, because it's like they had to come up with 100 individual voices, and it's just like that's the
I
funniest part
just
about
watch it subtitled. I didn't know they had a dubbed version.
Oh yeah, they got a dubbed version, and it's like like one of the big dudes that makes it to like the end, the real big guy, and he's just like, oh yeah, that's a very great story that you're telling me. Yeah, like I would watch it baked and just laugh my ass off, because especially when they're like all yelling, it's like, come on, you can do it, and it's just, yeah, it was my preferred way to watch it.
Very like Iron Chef vibes.
Yeah.
That's what it makes me think of. But yeah, so these statues, they looked kind of fucking weird, and people were like, I don't know. But they didn't, again, like with all this stuff, they didn't have any proof, you know? Like the curator who got them, he said he authenticated them and they were up. People liked them. And so like there's especially like Italian art historians were like, this doesn't really look right. But again, there were like sort of cultural motivators to keep these here. Like for one, classical art is really popular at this time. Like ancient Greek and Roman art is, considered to be like of the highest quality. So there's no, like, people won't hear any criticism of it, you know? This is why the Met has so much of it, is because this is what was fashionable to collect. So the other thing that made it complicated is, which happens with a lot of the artifacts that we're talking about, is like, because it was bought from a dealer, they didn't know where it was allegedly from. Like they couldn't locate an archaeological site that these had come from to compare with anything, because they got it from a dealer, which like happens all the time. So they would just say, oh, well, the reason these look different is because they're so heavily influenced by Greece, and that's unusual, and that's why they're interesting. And, it's not a sign that they're fake. It's a sign that they're notable. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Your flaws are what make you perfect.
Exactly.
To drake it up a bit in here.
So finally, in 1960, a ceramic archaeologist named Joseph Noble found a way to test the sculptures. So they basically tested the pigment on them because they knew how the Etruscans did this black glaze pottery.
Yeah.
They knew the chemical composition. They tested the black glaze on these, and they found this is not, this is not how they did them. Like,
Yeah.
it had manganese in it, and they were like, the Etruscan glaze doesn't have manganese in it. This is clearly, something else. So he publishes his findings, and the Met sort of takes them down. But apparently there were like other things that should have tipped them off to this ahead of time before this chemical analysis came out. For one, the sculptures don't have any vent holes in them, which if they were fired whole, that they would explode. Like, you can't,
Yeah.
you can't do that. So like that was very suspicious. And yeah, so they pulled these off. They pulled these off display, and then a few years later, after they realized, after it was sort of confirmed that these were not ancient Etruscan, they figured out who made them. So apparently, the dealer that they got them from had been connected to other forged art at the time. And they traced it back to these three brothers and their pal. Just, I don't know his affiliation. He was around. Yeah. So
I don't even, like, when you're a kid, you ever like be friends with a group of siblings?
Yep.
Yeah, this is the kind of shit that happens if those go too far in life.
Yep.
That's what.
He was always going over to eat at their house, and then the next thing you know,
next year you're forging art. Yeah,
they're forging art together. So yeah, it was Riccardo Teodoro and Virgilio Riccardi and their friend Alfredo Adolfo Fioravanti, and
all the syllables.
All the syllables, every vowel covered. So these dudes were like living it up as art forgers because they were living in Italy at the turn of the 20th century, where they had easy access to like actual ancient artifacts.
Yeah.
Place is full of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You can't throw a calzone without hitting some damn statue.
They literally can't build a subway in Rome.
Yeah.
They gave up because they were like, every time we do, it takes years because they have to excavate whatever important historical shit they find, and so we can't build a subway.
Yeah.
So
and not even like the subway station. Like, they tried to build a Subway sandwich shop, and they're like,
even then, yeah. Apparently, it actually is like a really big problem there, where like people don't ever want to tell the government that they found anything because they're just like, we're just expanding our kitchen. Like, please let us expand our kitchen.
Yeah. Oh, great. A mosaic is behind my fucking cupboards. That's great. Right. Yeah. Dude, I'm digging at work right now because I'm doing a new construction, and I've never done that. Like, and so it's like I'm literally working in a field where there will be a building at some point.
Yeah.
And so we're digging a bunch, and I, like, in my head, I'm talking like the shovel hits. I'm like, ooh, what if it was a bone? What if it was an arrowhead? I get all excited. And so far, all I found was I found a wristband. And so he had buried it. And I was like joking with my coworker. I was like, we can go to South by in 2017. Yeah, if I find anything, I could get weeks off work.
Yeah.
Ooh, totally. I'm gonna plant some shit. And you're like, oh, you know what? I'm not gonna do that. Never mind. Let's go back in a little brown. Think about that.
But yeah, so these guys, like, they had access to all this stuff, so they had tons of stuff that they could copy, make copies of. And also there were so many antiquities dealers, both like legitimate people and crooked people, who came to them to get like repairs and copies made of stuff that they had. So these guys had like a whole workshop cranking this stuff out, and they're the ones who made this Etruscan warrior set of statues.
This was the turn of the 20th century, correct?
They were acquired in like throughout the 20s and then put on display in 1933.
Okay. So, but you said that the brothers had, like, you said it was the turn of the 20th century when they had their workshop, and they were like,
that's like in the teens and 20s was when they were making this stuff.
It's like, at what point that's got to have a collector's thing. That's like we always reference back to the fake Rolex. It's like, at what, if you're making a fake Rolex, at what point are you just making like that? Those are like over 100 years old now, and they have a cool story behind them. I would want those instead. I'd want those little nubby-legged guys.
They do. I mean, they have a fun story behind them now, especially so, like, finally in 1961, after these were taken off view, the surviving member of the group, who was the friend, the brother's friend, the last one left, they convince him to testify in front of the U.S. consulate in Rome and explain what happened. And apparently he had so the big warrior was missing some fingers. And like with the mummy, apparently this guy kept the thumb. Oh, so he showed them. Yeah.
Damn. But yeah, hey, good for him for waiting until his boys were dead. to rat about. Man, that's a coming of age tale. That needs to be a movie. 4 Italian homies, turn of the century, cranking out fake art, not a phone in sight. As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be an art forger.
So it's funny because they asked him about why were these proportions so weird, and they were just he was just the ceiling in our studio was really low. That's why. It's so funny.
He's an art historian. Be if you notice, all the statues are short because they had a small ceiling. They wanted to build bigger, simply could not.
So he said that they copied a bunch of it from existing work, and it's kind of embarrassing that the Met didn't realize, because one of the things they copied from was something owned by the Met. So he said they copied the Greek warrior from a picture of a small bronze Greek statue in a book from the Berlin Museum. The old warrior was from an Etruscan coffin at the British Museum, which actually also turned out to be a forgery. So they copied another forgery. And then the big warrior head, they modeled from an Etruscan vase in the Met's own collection. So the fact that they didn't recognize this is pretty embarrassing. But yeah, so after they got pulled off view, they got locked in the basement of the Met, presumably still there, never to be publicly looked at again. But they didn't get rid of them because, as you said, kind of cool story.
Yeah. Also, it. If you're buying stolen art, eventually you're gonna buy some fake stolen art, or just fake art. Mm-hmm. You play with fire, you're gonna get burned. But
yeah, I mean, there's been a couple other instances of this, of forgeries making their way in. I mean, in the British Museum too. But yeah, it's sort of interesting because it's the Met has kind of probably the biggest reputation for this of all the big museums. But it's because the other ones just got it from colonialism. Yeah. So it's well, they have provenance, but they just stole them under the auspices of the government. So there have been a lot of efforts to repatriate some of this art. The biggest one I think is the Elgin marbles that were in the British Museum. But yeah, man, museums are really weird. I mean, they're cool. I really like going to them, but it's real complicated how they get their stuff, and a lot of them are doing really shady shit. So yeah, think about that next time you see some crazy shit at a museum.
Yeah, that's why I stick mainly to roadside museums that have just 7-foot carved out of one single tree trunk Bigfoot statues, and he's sitting on a bench, and you can take a picture with him. That's a really cool museum.
You know who made that, because it's the owner of the museum, and you don't have to worry about where it came from.
I like to go to somewhere where finding out that a town is famous for something, and they have a little place that's open from 11 to 2, and you go in there. I was walking through the town that you go to when you go to Mount Everest, or not Mount Everest, Nepal, Mount Rushmore. Sorry, not to conflate the greatness of the two, but the town. Yeah, I just walked into this community center. I was going on my walk, and there was 3 kids in there using the computer, and then there was some facts about the town, and the lady told me if I wanted to, she could open the gym and I could play basketball, and I was like, no, I'm just wearing Jordans. I don't actually do anything with them, but thank you. But that was a fun little treat. I got to learn about the town and walk around, and that was cool. So that's why I stick to those. Cruelty free is what I say when I do my museums. Worth it. I don't know if that applies to these ones. I would say if you're getting art out of a failing state for the sake of preserving the art, do what you got to do, but also
just give it back once things calm down. I think that's keep
it at the crib. Just have it there and be like, dude, I got it. It's by the door. Yeah, I'm hanging a coat on it, but it's fine. Well, yeah, thank you so much for telling us about that, Kath. I really enjoyed hearing that. That was a fun and relaxing episode. I like talking about art and ancient history, museums. That was cool as hell. Guys, I hope you enjoyed that. Like I said, we do 2 episodes every month. If you liked what you hear, you can get 2 more episodes at our Patreon, patreon.com/lie, cheat, and steal. We're on YouTube. We're on TikTok until that fucking gets taken away. And we're also on Instagram. And you can find all those at Lie, Cheat, Steal Podcast, TikTok, YouTube, Instagram. Also, if you liked what you heard today, give us a review, leave a rating, tell your friends, go into work, talk to all your coworkers about our podcast, tell them how great it is. Just really get under their skin till they have to listen to it to appease you. Kath, you got anything coming up?
I don't think so, but we also have an ad-free version of our show on our Patreon. So
there
if
you go. Yeah,
hate hearing ads, sign up for our Patreon. You get an ad-free version of all the free episodes, and of course, all of the Patreon-only episodes are ad-free as well.
Of course.
I'm Kath Barbadoro. I'm Kath Barbadoro on social media, so follow me there.
Yep. We are, like I said, our socials are Lie, Cheat, Steal Podcast. I'm at PZTX, at PEEZYTX. Also, with our Patreon, you get access to our Discord chat. That's a fun place, too. But, guys, thank you for listening. I hope your late April is going good. I hope nobody died in the eclipse. And, guys, we're always love talking to you. Thanks for tuning in. Be safe, be smart, but above all, don't get caught.